Next Chapter Podcasts.
The world is growing more complicated by the day, but too often, everyone seems to be operating on the same old assumptions about global affairs. But if you're not sure that world domination by the United States is the right path for America or the world, or if you've got questions about conventional geopolitical thinking, you should check out American Prestige, a foreign policy podcast from a different perspective. Every week on American Prestige, historian and former Bernie Sanders foreign policy advisor Daniel Bessner, that's me, and my co-host, the journalist Derek Davison, analyze U.S. foreign policy from a critical framework that sheds light on myriad topics related to international affairs. So, if you're curious to know what U.S. foreign policy would look like if the interests of all people in the world, and not only rich Americans, were taken into account, then check out American Prestige at AmericanPrestigePod.com. That's AmericanPrestigePod.com. And you could, of course, also find us on your favorite podcast app.
From the history of radioactive makeup to all the loony things Henry VIII did to ensure we never stop making movies about him, Weird History is a podcast that answers all the questions you didn't even know you had about the most unbelievable people, places, and events of the past. Based on the hugely successful YouTube channel, Weird History invites you to bone up on what it was like to use a public bathroom in ancient Rome while learning about the single worst year of all time. Don't worry, we missed it by a millennium or so. Then get the skinny on modern history, like the true story behind The Conjuring, and just what the hell Steven Seagal did to get banned from SNL. Let Weird History be your guide to the stranger side of history they don't teach you in school. Because the past is weird, a lot weirder than you think. Subscribe now, wherever you get your podcasts.
I have a great dish that I just love, and it's one of my signatures. It's like Mexican shrimp and grits. I make like an anchovy butter with ancho chilies. And then I make like a little, instead of just doing straight up grits, I'll make like a grit cake and then put roasted poblano in there with some cheese and just make it really yummy and delicious. So it's a beautiful example of putting Mexico and New Orleans together.
Everything that is based on simple cookery of any ingredient grown in the South is Southern food. 1. 2, anything that falls under the canon of any crop that is grown in the South is Black food. 3, all Southern food has an origin in Blackness, which has an origin in Africa.
You know what I'm saying? It's like we got a demo tape and nobody want to hear it, but it's like this, the South got something to say.
Hello, and welcome to Our New South, a podcast series presented by Levine Museum of the New South in Charlotte, North Carolina. Levine Museum connects the past to the future to realize the promises of a New South. To learn more and donate to projects like this, visit museumoftheNewSouth.org. Hi, my name is Kevin Blackistone of the Washington Post, coming to you from the University of Maryland, where I teach. And I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Robert Greene II, a professor of history at Claflin University.
In the first season of Our New South, we sought to offer a unique look at the evolution of the New South and how historic Southern cities, including Charlotte, North Carolina, are confronting complicated issues ranging from equity in education to immigration to civil rights to social and economic mobility.
Our New South Season 2 explores the complexities of the many New Souths that make up today's New South. The series highlights opportunities and challenges that different communities face, diving into censorship and healthcare, tourism and religion, struggles for rights and resources, and the global reverberations of New South culture.
We thank you for joining us on this journey and for making the show a Signal Award and Anthem Award winner. Follow the show, rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, let's get to today's episode of the show.
South got something to say.
Today's episode of Our New South focuses on food. We are really excited to have thoughtful conversations with our accomplished guests about a subject close to our hearts, or should I say, our stomachs. Before we get to our guest, I would like to ask Dr. Robert Greene to provide us with some brief insight on food in the South.
To say that food is an integral part of the Southern experience is akin to saying the sky is blue or that Auburn and Alabama football fans cannot stand each other. In other words, it is stating the obvious. But Southern cuisine, like the cuisine of many regions and countries around the world, says as much about the history of that region as it does about the eating preferences of the people who live there. It would be impossible to imagine Southern culture, history, or traditions without the various peoples that, together, crafted the unmistakable magic of Southern cuisine. Southern food was born out of the interaction of three groups: Africans, Europeans, and indigenous peoples. All three brought together various culinary traditions from their homelands, along with different ingredients that helped give birth to Southern cuisine. Africans brought with them items such as black-eyed peas, okra, and various cultivation strategies for rice. Europeans brought from the old world to the new a variety of livestock, sugar, milk, and other essential items. Indigenous peoples, meanwhile, spent generations cultivating and cooking items such as hominy, which became grits, along with tomatoes, squash, and corn. The long history of barbecue in the South also begins with indigenous people. The popular staple of macaroni and cheese was birthed by an enslaved chef, James Hemings, who brought the macaroni pie dish from Paris, France, to the United States at the behest of his owner, Thomas Jefferson. The impact of slavery on Southern food can be felt well beyond the creation of mac and cheese. Various staples of Black Southern diets were born from a need to find any source of nutrition and nourishment, often not provided by enslavers who were only interested in the bottom line of profits from slavery and not the well-being of the enslaved themselves. Today, Southern cuisine is taking some new and interesting directions. The fusion of food between Texas and Mexico, Tex-Mex, is undergoing revolutionary changes. Across the South, restaurants are combining ingredients and cooking traditions from the global South with the U.S. South. In major Southern cities, one can find authentic Mexican cuisine alongside Korean, Japanese, Indian, West African, and Ethiopian restaurants. But Southern staples such as macaroni and cheese, black-eyed peas, collard greens, fried chicken, and sweet tea have become popular in both the non-Southern United States and around the world. A symbol of globalization, for example, has been the explosion in Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurants all over the world, often including local menu fare, along with the dishes Colonel Sanders perfected decades ago. Southern cuisine is the South distilled to its basic elements: the hope, the suffering, and the ingenuity of the Southern people, placed on a plate and served to family and stranger alike. Y'all come and eat.
Our first guest is Aarón Sanchez. Aarón is an award-winning chef, TV personality, author, and philanthropist. He is a judge on MasterChef and MasterChef Junior. He is the co-host and executive producer of El Toque de Aarón on Discovery Familia and Hogar de HGTV. He co-hosts a podcast with his mom, Zarela Martinez, called Cooking in Mexican from A to Z, and is the chef partner of restaurants Johnny Sanchez. Last but not least, he is the co-founder of Aarón Sanchez Impact Fund, a nonprofit program whose mission is to uplift the lives of Latino youth through food. Our New South welcomes Aarón Sanchez. All right. Aarón Sanchez.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to our podcast, Our New South. And today we're talking with you about what it is you do, which, and I'm sure so many of our listeners know from seeing you on television, buying your cookbooks, maybe reading your memoir, and most importantly, eating your food. But first of all, let me have you introduce yourself to our audience by letting it know who you are, where you're from, and what it is you do.
Yes, well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to both of you gentlemen for having me on. I just think this is so special what you guys are doing, and enough respect, just to, be storytellers. I'm a tastemaker. You guys are storytellers. You know what I'm saying? In my own way, I think I'm a storyteller as well. But my name's Aarón Sanchez. I'm a chef. Originally from the border area, Mexico, Juarez, El Paso, Texas. Had a great opportunity to kind of move to New York very early on, kind of in my adolescence, and my mom was a caterer and a social worker in El Paso, Texas. So it's a very kind of cool bicultural place to kind of grow up. It's one of those places where everybody speaks Spanish, even though you're in America. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like Miami in that way. And then my mom, kind of separated from my father and said, you know what, I'm going to go do my thing. And I want to be able to own my own restaurant and do my thing. And she just was kind of like the Tina Turner, like a Mexican Tina Turner. She was like, yo, I just need my name and my kids and I'm out. And we drove up to New York City in her catering van with all of our possessions and like 10 grand to our name. And she went and said, we're going to get an apartment on the Upper West Side and it's going to look good. And she wanted people that of influence to come and eat her food so she can start getting her name out there. And then from that kind of parlayed into, her being a chef at a restaurant in 1983. And then in 1987, she opened her namesake restaurant called Sarelas, and it was a huge success. So, I grew up in a restaurant family and that's kind of how my journey started.
And that's a fascinating journey. And what strikes me about it, and I think us on this show, is that with all that movement, you eventually came back to the South.
Exactly.
And back to New Orleans. What was it about the South that attracted you to return and inspired your work?
Yeah, it's a great question, Kevin. Sadly, when you're a teenager, I lost my father when I was 13 and I reacted poorly. I was in New York City, so around a lot of bad influences, obviously. And I was kind of just, lost. And my mom, met Paul Prudhomme, the great chef from New Orleans, one of the founders of Cajun cuisine. And he and my mom were friends, and she said, I'm kind of at a loss with this kid. He has a lot of potential, but he just needs to have some discipline and some structure. So she kind of sent me there at 16 as a way of kind of like, an intervention, if you will, and just kind of like get me right. And I stayed at his house. And so I always had fond memories of New Orleans. I was there for the summer. I came back when I was 18 and worked for a full year and then started doing some other things. But New Orleans has always been very, very deep in my heart because I felt like it was a place where I really had formative years. And so when I wanted to kind of leave New York and, do something different, I wanted to kind of slow it down and come back to roots. So that's why I came back to New Orleans 10 years ago. And it's been home since, and it's been great. There's something about people being, true to their word, having great manners, having traditional food, and tradition and knowing where their families are from and just all those different influences. And it's just a beautiful gumbo, you know what I mean? And it speaks to me all the time.
And about New Orleans, people don't often think about the Spanish influence in New Orleans. Yet you go there and develop your native cuisine there into something that's spectacular. How were you able to do that? Learning from a chef like Prudhomme,
Yeah,
who was not necessarily rooted in that particular tradition.
absolutely. It was very interesting because, as a Mexican chef, there's not a huge community of Mexicans in New Orleans. Actually, the biggest Latino communities are Honduran and Nicaraguan, and with, peppered in there with some Salvadoreñans. But what ended up happening after Katrina in 2005, there was a huge influx of Mexicans from Texas and those areas that helped rebuild the city. So a lot of them stayed. And, so now New Orleans started becoming this, have a little Mexican flavor there. Now you start to get, fresh masa and different chiles that we are familiar with and all those kind of different things. So it started becoming more of that after Katrina. And then I just came down there and felt like there was, there was sort of a void of that kind of food. People in New Orleans and people that come visit want big flavor, right? And Mexican food is like that. It's, laden with chilies and layers of spices and all of those great things. And it's communal and it's very much that. So it kind of falls in line with what people's expectations are when they come there. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of why I wanted to kind of set up shop there. And, we don't have a huge population, but I think we have 900,000 permanent residents, but it's kind of trippy because I want to say, and don't quote me on this verbatim, but I think it's like 60% are under the poverty line. So it's like really, you only have 200,000, 250,000 people that can sustain local business, but we have such a huge 14 million tourists or whatever it is a year. And that's how New Orleans functions. You know what I'm saying? Because of that influx of people from away. So you have to kind of cater to that audience.
That's fantastic. And Chef, I got to say, I was intrigued with this interview because first off, you are, as you just mentioned, a Mexican restaurateur in New Orleans. And we think of New Orleans in terms of French cuisine, Cajun cuisine, Southern cuisine overall. But one of the things that really stands out about your cuisine making is that you have a strong loyalty to tradition from your mother and grandmother. Could you talk a little bit about some of the Mexican cuisine traditions you keep up with that you really keep in place and why that's so important to your brand of cooking today?
That's a fantastic question, Sir Robert. You know, the idea being is that I don't, when you start out as a chef, I had grandiose ideas of like doing this kind of molecular food, and when I was young in my 20s, and do this kind of big old food with Fufito sauces and stuff like that. And then as you mature as a chef, you start going back to grandma's kitchen, and that starts to speak to you. You know what I'm saying? And I told everybody this all the time. I'm always like, if you're blessed to have elders in your family, record them, whether they're talking, whether they're cooking, to have that, because you'll be remiss if you don't, when they're gone, you don't have those beautiful story and the beautiful stories that they tell through food or just through life in general. So now, as I've matured as a chef, now for me, the simple food really speaks to me, and in grandma's kitchen. I think if you ask anybody whose food is the most delicious, they would say their grandmother. And I always tell everybody, I'm like, yo, you ever see your grandmother move fast? Grandmas are never in a rush. So that damn pot is stewing all day, baby, and developing flavor and just getting, boom, boom, boom. Because there's not, this impetus to hustle for it or get it out in 30 minutes or whatever the hell it is. So that's why I think as you get older, that's the food that really speaks to me. I don't believe in fusion food because I feel it's confusion. But in New Orleans is very interesting because it's such, Mr. Blackistone said, the idea about, the Spanish influence in New Orleans. Yes, it is, but it's truly a gumbo. So it's kind of like this place where fusion kind of exists. But you know what I'm saying? In the sense that there's, indigenous influence, African influence, Spain, France, all of that. And so it's very interesting to see the ingredients, the palette of ingredients speak to you. So now I'm set. Now I know who my identity as a chef is, and that's why I go back to tradition, as you said, Doctor. So yeah, all that.
Well, and to follow up, I'm really curious as to what you see as the impact of Mexican cuisine overall on cuisine in the United States and especially in the American South, because I think we tend to put up these neat dividing lines between those three styles of cuisine. But in fact, there's, like you just mentioned, some overlap there from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think in general, Mexican food is one. A lot of people have very strong opinions about it. It's kind of like Chinese food. It's like, you grow up with it. And if I go out there and I make an effort to kind of make and elevate it with contemporary technique using, high quality ingredients, I'm charging this amount. They're like, well, shit, I can go to a taqueria and get that, go to a, family place and get it for less than that. So that's kind of always been a little bit of a struggle. But I think the South, people go down there to eat and to, have a great time and expect, great food. It's not like, I'm sorry, if I go to the Midwest, I know I'm going to get a steak and potato. You know what I'm saying? I go down to the South, I know I'm in for something really good. And chances are it's going to be, laden with big flavor. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I want to be in front of an audience that wants great food. So that's kind of, a big reason why I'm there, and why I love it so much.
And are there any dishes that you would point to as your kind of signatures right now, and maybe how those have developed within the worldly cuisine of New Orleans?
Yeah. Well, I have a great dish that I just love, and it's one of my signatures. It's like Mexican shrimp and grits. So this is a perfect example of like taking New Orleans and Mexico and putting it together. So I make it, I make like an anchovy butter with ancho chilies. All right. So I'm taking like, some of those, there's rosemary and shrimp and grits. There's usually like a lot of Worcestershire sauce. and then, tons of good butter. So I take both those influences and put them together. And then I make like a little, instead of just doing straight up grits, I'll make like a grit cake and then put roasted poblano in there with some cheese and just make it really yummy and delicious. So it's a beautiful example of putting Mexico and New Orleans together. Yeah, so my Mexican shrimp and grits.
So that's a lot of heat.
Yeah, no, dude, I mean, that's Mr. Kevin. That's where it's at. You know what I mean? So all day long.
I'm glad no one could see my face because that sounds so good right now. And I got to say, being based in South Carolina, there are plenty of folks here who hear shrimp and grits and want to say to themselves, okay, we'll be the final judge of that. But I think from the ingredients you just mentioned, it would be a hit here too.
Yeah.
But actually, I'm going to ask you about dishes in a moment, but I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about your heritage as someone who is of Mexican descent and how that's important to not only your cuisine, but also how you present yourself on television, on both Fox and Food Network. You've been adamant about promoting the Spanish language amongst younger Latino people. Why is that so important to you? And why do you think that's especially important to people of Latino descent in the South to really hold on to their cultural heritage and Spanish language?
That's a fantastic question. Yeah, I think it's super important because I'm the perfect example of a bicultural, Mexican American, that has one foot in both cultures. And I think right now we're living in a very interesting time where you have second generation, even first generation Latinos trying to rescue their roots. Like back in the day when I came up, it's like your parents didn't teach you Spanish because you wanted to acclimate and be not looked at as an immigrant. You know what I'm saying? So now you have people, at my age, 50, whatever, and some of them have not been taught Spanish because they grew up and their parents had that story. And it's very interesting to see now these kids nowadays, because our culture is being so much popularized and kind of like sexy to come back home. And now it's almost like a third genre. Like I do television in Spanish and in English. And, it's interesting to I wear these two hats and I totally to talk to different audiences. And it's really interesting for me personally, to kind of just, live in both worlds. But for me, the aspects of my culture and and how I've been sort of brought up says everything, and the South in particular has all of the values that I was brought up with.
We know you're from Mexico. We know you are Mexican American. Are you Southern Mexican American? Are you a Southerner now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a proud Southerner. Absolutely.
What makes you a Southerner?
What makes me a Southerner is because I guess my manners, my embracement of just great food, the culture, understanding how to be a person of your word, follow through. All of those things I think sometimes are forgotten in big city and metropolis areas sometimes. I think the core values of being a Southerner, well, some would argue I'm actually more Southern than y'all because Mexico's more South.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So man, you can mess around with that one too if you want, but it's definitely about that. It's just about the core values and as you mature in life, those are more important, so.
Well, I did notice that one of your favorite music groups is Alabama Shakes.
Yes, I love my Alabama Shakes, for sure. Yeah, they're great. I mean, she's amazing. I mean, and I'm a big outdoor man, so I'd love to be. I've had a cabin in Alabama. I spent time in Mississippi because my business partner and chef went to Ole Miss in Oxford. So I've been all around. And then what you do when you're from New Orleans, what you do is you have like kind of a summer vacation house in Pensacola. So you drive through that area. You go through 3 southern states. You go to Mississippi, Alabama, and then get to Florida, and then of course Louisiana. But so I've kind of seen a little bit of the geography of the South and how distinct it is. It's really special, and the history. And I think it's why I wanted to participate in your guys' podcast is because it's not as old school. That's why you guys see the new South. It's not it's exciting because it's kind of entrenched in tradition, but also evolving so rapidly now. So, what you guys are doing is really, really valuable and I think emblematic of the time.
I think anyone who talks about making shrimp and grits and going to Pensacola is a true Southerner. So I think we can safely put that to bed this afternoon. But I did want to ask you to go back to Latino cuisine for a second. What are some other cities in the South that you see as important areas of Latino cuisine and culture?
It's a great question. Actually, where I've been, that I spent a little bit of time is Birmingham, Alabama, with, because I have a good friend of mine named Chris Lilly, who's like this great pit master from a place called Big Blackistone Barbecue. And they're very famous for the white barbecue sauce, which is like epic with chicken. And he's a great dude. And, we had we kind of shelved it during the pandemic, but wanted to do kind of a Mexican barbecue concept with him. And when I was there, I was very impressed by the amount of Latinos in Birmingham. And it's very centrally located. I mean, you can get to Atlanta in a couple hours, you get to New Orleans in 5, you can get to Memphis quite quickly. So it's a very interesting place. And I kind of was very smitten when I first went to Birmingham. I was like, wow, this place is awesome. So yeah, I think Birmingham has a lot of love like that. I think, of course, Atlanta,
Since I know now that you're a sports fan, what sports team have you migrated to? What college?
Okay, here's the deal. So when you come to the South, now we're talking the South, okay? The New South. When I got down to New Orleans, they said it's all obviously SEC, right, and all that. You can either be a Go Tigers, a Hottie Toddy, or Roll Tide, right? That's kind of the deal. You got to go for those 3 teams. And I know Cooper Manning well. He's a friend because he doesn't live far from me. And so I'm an LSU guy all the way now. I just love Bergeron. I loved how crazy he was, and you know what I mean. Like, they don't get more Cajun than that dude, bro. I mean, you have to like dub him, you know what I mean, or do something with him, like a translation. yeah, that go Tigers. You know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh. So crazy stuff. So and I've been in New Orleans St. Fan since 1990 when we had the Dome Patrol.
What is your favorite Southern dish, like non-Mexican Southern dish?
Oh, man. Oh. All right. So I'm one of those weird guys that loves turtle soup during Christmas. All right. So in New Orleans, you have turtle soup during Christmas with a sherry flambe. I love it. I love griots, which are kind of like little sort of seared over grits. I love some griots and grits. Man, there's so many. I mean, of course, the quintessential gumbo, but all my boys, because we go out and we'll hunt or we'll do something like that and be outside, and then everybody makes their damn gumbo. And like, if you've ever had a duck gumbo, like really well done, it's something that's spectacular.
Man, you are Southern.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you guys.
Well, thank you for accepting our invitation. This has been fantastic. I could talk to you another
Me
hour.
too, man.
Like, I would love to find out if how you've incorporated crawfish into your dish.
Oh yeah, no, we make great question, Senor Blackistone. We make crawfish enchiladas.
Whoa.
So when it's crawfish season, but I do it not with the red sauce, I do it with the green sauce, so it's a little lighter. If you had our crawfish enchiladas, you'll know the power, bro. It's for real, dude. And that's another dish I forgot to mention to you guys. Well, the Mexican grits in that one too.
Really? Yeah. I'm absolutely.
We'll share a meal. I'll come and cook with y'all. Okay?
Yeah. Man, thanks. This is great.
AI is incredible. It can teach you how to fry an egg and even write a poem, pirate style. Yarr! But it knows nothing about your work. Slackbot is different. It doesn't just know the facts. It knows your schedule. It can turn a brainstorm into a brief. And it doesn't need to be taught. Because Slackbot isn't just another AI. It's AI that knows your work as well as you do. Visit slack.com/meet Slackbot to learn more.
From the history of radioactive makeup to all the loony things Henry VIII did to ensure we never stop making movies about him, Weird History is a podcast that answers all the questions you didn't even know you had about the most unbelievable people, places, and events of the past. Based on the hugely successful YouTube channel, Weird History invites you to bone up on what it was like to use a public bathroom in ancient Rome while learning about the single worst year of all time. Don't worry, we missed it by a millennium or so. Then get the skinny on modern history, like the true story behind The Conjuring, and just what the hell Steven Seagal did to get banned from SNL. Let Weird History be your guide to the stranger side of history they don't teach you in school. Because the past is weird, a lot weirder than you think. Subscribe now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Our next guest on today's episode of Our New South are Greg and Subrina Collier, who bring Memphis flavor to Charlotte, North Carolina. The Colliers are chefs and restaurateurs, owners of Uptown Yoke, Leah and Louise, and their latest is Third and Fernwood. They created the Bay Haven Food and Wine Festival. It's also worth noting that Greg Collier is not only a multiple-time finalist for the coveted James Beard Award, but he's the first Charlotte-based chef to be nominated for that award as well. That's pretty impressive, if I do say so myself. Our New South welcomes Greg and Subrina Collier.
So when we start out, we always like to ask our guests to introduce themselves to our audience by telling them who you are, where you're from, and where you're at. So please.
I'm Subrina Collier. I am from Memphis, Tennessee, and I am in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I am one of the co-owners of Bay Haven Restaurant Group here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We own, under that umbrella, Uptown Yoke, which is our breakfast concept, Third and Fernwood, which is our more lunch, dinner, casual concept, and Leah and Louise, which is now in process of moving, which is our more fine dining concept. And we are founders of Bay Haven Food and Wine Festival.
My name is Greg Collier, chef, born and raised Memphis, Tennessee, specifically Black Haven, Tennessee, which is a part of Memphis, Tennessee. And we are in Charlotte, North Carolina, specifically the west side of Charlotte, North Carolina, Beatties Ford Corridor.
So you're both from Memphis.
Yes.
You studied in Arizona.
Yeah.
And you come back to Charlotte.
Yeah.
So what was most important, coming back to the South or going to Charlotte, or both?
So I was in Memphis. We were both in Memphis, and Sabrina had moved to Nashville recently. I was in Memphis, and I figured out culinary school and being a chef was the thing. And I knew that in order for me to become who I was, I had to get out of Memphis because being from Memphis was such a strong part of my DNA and who I was that I had to figure out what else I was. So I went to Arizona, went to culinary school in Scottsdale. Eventually, me and Sabrina became a thing. She moved out, and then I was doing my thing, she was doing her thing. I think being in Arizona was great, right? We still say all the time, we plan to have a winter home or something in Phoenix, Arizona, because we loved it. The experience was great. It just ain't Black, and it just ain't Southern. And for us, I think being from Memphis, I thought that was just kind of, whatever. That don't really matter. I can move and still be that and still encompass that within myself. Being in Arizona, for me, I got to a point where I was like, nope, can't do it. I got to get back around my people. I got to get back to the South. I got to figure out who I am as a chef, and running away from the South and all that means when it comes to cookery and farmland and all that. I thought that was what I was supposed to do, but when I realized that was a part of my disempowerment, so I had to get back to the South and Black folks and Southernness in that way.
And for us, when we moved to Phoenix, it was like you said, Greg was going to get his culinary training. I am a front of the house person, always have been. When we met, I was waiting tables off Beale Street. So I've always been front of the house, hostess. I'm better with forefront, talking to the guests, know how to hold my temperament for the most part. But that's always been my passion. Just because I just think food is such a powerful tool. It's a tool, people come in angry. And I saw this young, right? Some people come in hungry, and I saw them get some food or some good food, and their attitude immediately switched. And I always enjoyed that. My parents were in Charleston, and my sisters are a lot younger than me. They're 24, 25 now, but they were little kids. They were growing up, and I was like, I'm going to miss a lot of this, and I miss the South. but I didn't want to be where my parents was at. So I was like, I didn't want to be too close to them. So we looked up cities. I looked up top cities for Black entrepreneurs, small business, right? So we just Googled. And Charlotte was on the list. Now, when I got here, they was lying, but that's okay. It's better now. But when I got here in 2012, that was a lie. I'm talking about it was like, and they were, I was like, okay, cool. And I was like, it's not this far from Charleston. We can come here. And Charlotte was an untapped area. I knew my husband wanted to do food. So he's looking up, okay, you know how Atlanta was already Atlanta. New Orleans was already New Orleans.
New York,
Charleston was
Chicago,
Charleston.
Philly. Like all the cities we were looking at that were on the list, food-wise,
they were already
had such a strong food culture, no matter how you look at it. Like, and I hate to even be saying this, but it's kind of what it is. It's like you have the Black food scene, right? So kind of soul food, southern restaurants, lounges, yada, 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 or what they think our food is, right? And then you have the higher-end general populace, the other restaurants, the creative, chef-driven things, right? And Charlotte was a place to where there was some soul food spots, there was some meat and threes, there was some southern spots, and there was some higher-end restaurants. But just for me, as a chef trying to become something, right? I was like, all right, bet. If we go to Charlotte, it's enough Black people to support us regardless of what we do. It was on this list that's nuts now. And also, the chef scene hadn't become what we knew it would become. And I wanted to be a part of the growth of a scene versus going to a place that I already had a scene and trying to find out how to become part of that scene.
And I think that's a really important point I want to kind of jump off on. You guys have said a lot already that I want to dive into, but no. But one thing I want to jump on in particular is the idea of Black Southern cuisine. Because earlier on, you mentioned how Atlanta and New Orleans and Charleston and Memphis were all these centers of Black Southern cooking. Could you talk a bit more about defining what Black Southern cooking is in your definition and how there are different versions of it across the South, so to speak?
So let me do my my pre-conversation footnotes. I'm not a historian, but I believe in the viewpoints of a few very important Black historians. 2, I'm not an anthropologist. Same thing. I believe in the viewpoints of some Black anthropologists that we know. There are researchers who've done the work to see what Southern food is and what it means to me. I agree with a lot of what they say. I disagree with a lot of it too. So I'll give you my historically informed, very strong opinion on what I think Southern food is. Everything that is based on simple cookery of any ingredient grown in the South is Southern food. 1. 2, anything that falls under the canon of any crop that is grown in the South is Black food. 3, all Southern food has an origin in Blackness, which has an origin in Africa. So all food that is connected to Africa directly or indirectly is Black Southern food. I think that, and I believe that because I think the first mistake that is made when trying to characterize Black Southern food is the letting go or giving away of the farmland and the ingredient-specific things. So then you kind of take yourself out. It's like, oh, well, that ain't Southern food. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I think, like, the way I think about Black Southern food is from that kind of lens. So then I understand the canon of macaroni, but I'm not looking at macaroni and cheese as Southern food just because it's in the canon of Black cookery, right? I'm looking at rice and everything that is originated from a rice dish. So Hoppin' John is Black Southern food. Gumbo is Black Southern food. Jambalaya is Black Southern food. Chicken bog is Black Southern food. So I think about Southern food in that way, and I like to connect the dots from the ingredient standpoint because I think that empowers us more. The Black farmer is one of the most important, if not the most important, non-professional Black job that exists, right? So like Black jobs in general, I think that is the most important Black job, being a farmer, being a Black farmer, because they begin to tell the story about what can be. Ginger anything done with ginger in the South that originates from Africa is Black Southern food. Sweet potato. We know in Carolinas, in North Carolina especially, it is our crop. It is the most grown crop. Not only is it the most grown crop in the Carolinas, it is the highest producing sweet potato area in the world. Rice. We talk about Charleston and New Orleans and the rice culture and the rice kitchen, right? What we don't talk about is rice as an agricultural producer that actually helped grow the South. We talk about tobacco, we talk about cotton, but we don't talk about rice enough. And I think we don't talk about rice enough because people want to connect the low country with rice, and then they want to connect the low country with Charleston. And then they want to connect that with like the Southern Belle white version of the story versus Gullah Geechee people versus the African piece versus that connection.
Versus
because
slaves.
Versus
you gotta go all the way
folks.
back
Because
to
if you tighten up the story from that perspective, then Black folks create and run it. So you got to turn the story a little bit to where it's not Black-centric because you want to have a different conversation.
And I think when people say Black Southern food, it ain't Black Southern food. Black Southern food is Southern food. Southern food is American food. So when people try to, Black Southern food is American food. And so people try, like my husband said, they try to piece it off. They don't want folks to know barbecue came from Black folks. Y'all didn't want the pig. Y'all didn't want them parts of the pig. Y'all gave us that as scrap. And we went through like we always do. And we freaked it out and made it something. And now you want to come back and be like, oh my God, this is a delicacy. Yes. And so we see that a lot with Southern food for us.
Do you think that the Food and Wine Festival you put together, do you think it can inspire other festivals like across the South that are more representative of the people who live in it?
I hope so.
Let me speak to this. I don't just think it can. I think it already has. If you look at the proliferation of Black-centric, whether it's Caribbean, Jamaican, whatever, like after we did our festival, right, there's been a lot of, and the thing is, I think a lot of people think that the beginning of us doing this type of thing started with the festival. We actually started a group called Soul Food Session in 2016 with other chefs here in Charlotte, because my thing was, I'm doing all these dinners, and I'm usually the Black chef at the dinners. Now, be clear, real quick. Let me toot my own horn. I know that the reason why I was at these dinners because people saw me as one of the best chefs in the place, right? So it wasn't necessarily, hey, we need a Black chef, let's call Greg. I was one of the best chefs in the city, so trying to put together an event with one of the best chefs in the city usually is going to include me, especially at the time, right? So, but I just wanted to do that with other fellow Black chefs who I thought were also some of the best chefs in the city. So in 2016, we started that. That first dinner actually happened during a protest for the Keith Lamont Scott shooting here in Charlotte. We weren't planning to do it that way. It just worked. The happenstance happened. Same thing with the Bay Haven Festival. The plan happened during 2020. We didn't start planning it because 2020 was the quote-unquote year of reckoning or whatever, right? We started it because we had done soul food sessions for such a long time, and we kind of wanted to do our own thing, Subrina and I, and bring in more chefs from across the country and different places because we felt like and feel like Charlotte could be the epicenter for a Black culinary renaissance in a way that really never stopped in New York or like your Harlem, right? It never stopped. Yeah. So it didn't start all of a sudden. It's been going on the whole time. Same thing with Philly. Same thing Detroit, Chicago. Like we've had Black chefs doing great things in those cities for forever. In Charlotte, we've had Black restaurants, but I don't think any of those folks saw themselves as chefs. And so we thought like we could do this, but we could have this Black culinary renaissance in Charlotte as an epicenter because there is a lot of Black history here in Charlotte. It's just not talked about in the same way that maybe our partners in Durham are talked about because we're not necessarily Black Wall Street. Like you can't have a bunch of them in every place. Durham is North Carolina's Black Wall Street and has that conversation in that way.
Luckily, we had such a good relationship and support of all these different chefs across the country. They were like, hell yeah, I want to do it. We talk about barbecue in Texas. Adrienne Lipscomb is a woman, a Black woman doing barbecue. She's
doing everything. She just does barbecue because she's great at it.
She's great at it.
Because that's where she's from.
She's great at it. You got Josh in Atlanta. great at barbecue. Like, and every year they come, they do the pig. And I think one of the biggest things was, how do we make something that I mimic this from other cultures growing up. Memphis used to have Italian fest, and we had Asian festivals and stuff like that. I thought that was so cool. And we would go and eat. You get good food. Like, and it was their culture doing it. They're the ones doing the food. They're the ones, and everybody was invited. You can come, but these were the people doing the food. So when we decided to do a Black Food and Wine Festival, we had majority support, but you had some pushback, of course, from other folks saying, why I got to be Black? And, you know, people don't like Black folks doing their own stuff. Everybody else can do their stuff, but when it's Black, it's a trigger word. And so for us, it was...
Which is why, like, we say this often. We love our brothers and sisters from different places in the diaspora. But it's so easy to look at Black folks, especially Black folks from the American South, and say, oh, well, why are they trying to do a Black thing? Why is it a Black thing? Why is it a Black thing? Because Black, just Black, if you identify with descendants of enslaved Africans who were forcibly brought up here, right? If you connect that, then you got to deal with that. So I think folks, especially folks in America, they don't want to deal with Black Southern folks doing their own thing. It's okay if it's Jamaican people or Haitian people. Then it's not necessarily okay, but there's a bit of a buffer because they aren't the folks that made this country for us. So it's a different connection because they came
digestible.
Over.
It's digestible.
It's okay. It's West African people doing the festival. It's a Nigerian festival. It's a Ghanaian festival. Oh, Black festival. Those are Black folks too, but they're Black people with enough of deference for folks as a collective, white folks, to be like, oh, that's okay. Well, that's okay because they come from this country, so it's not the American Southern Negro doing these things. Yeah. It's all these other Black folks, so it's okay.
Our podcast deals primarily with this idea of the so-called New South.
Right.
Yeah.
And we always ask guests, when they hear that phrase, what does it mean to you? And I think you two are perfectly positioned to offer a unique take on what the New South means. So please tell us, when you hear that phrase, New South, what does it mean to you two?
I often think about Southernness in terms of how we receive Southern rap.
Yeah.
I think for a long time, Southern rap was received as like this random, buffoonish characterization of New York rap.
Yeah, okay.
And the point is, it's not. It's rap. Rap came from New York, but it's our version of what y'all are doing and what y'all were saying is going on there. Like people, the Ghetto Boys wasn't making up stuff that was going on in Houston. They were just telling stories about Houston. 3-6 Mafia wasn't, and 8 Ball and MJG wasn't making up stories about what was going on in Memphis. They were just telling it in a clever way. And people was like, oh my God, the gangster stuff. It's like a lot of those stories are real stories. And then I think the beginning, so how I look at it is, if you look at Scarface, Ghetto Boys, 3-6 Mafia, well, not even 3-6 Mafia, 8 Ball and MJG, Spice One, certain people, that's old South, right? Outkast is the beginning of the New South.
Yeah.
So I think what we are is what Outkast was to Southern hip hop, because we have made an accepted version of Southern food, what restaurants look like, so much so that in Charlotte, we were the first in Charlotte, period, to do so many things. So now it's like, yes, we Black. Yes, we're Black owned. All these things are very clear, right? Well, what they don't say, and in 10 years, maybe they'll say, man, they are responsible for this. They are partly responsible for this new Southern movement that's happening.
We want to make sure when our time is done and we left people with something, we taught people something. And so one of the most powerful things I think we have now is we have a direct tree of people. We're actually able to see our branches of people that started, that worked for us and are doing their own thing. And now they have restaurants, or they have Jasmine at the Donut Shop. You have Jimmy Pearls. You have my GM, who's now sommelier, went to Psalm School. That's important for us, because whether you saw are good, or you they did this good, they did that bad, I taught you something. And so that's our legacy. If nothing else, that's a huge part of our legacy.
Well, this is fantastic. I want to ask you before we leave, and then I'll also give Robert a chance to chime in as well. But what dish at one of your restaurants best encapsulates what we just went through in this conversation with you?
It'll always be and forever be grits. We have this type of question a lot of times, whether it's my favorite thing to cook, the thing I think represents me most as a chef. I think grits represent who we are and what we do more than anything, because if you think about grits and all you've ever had is Quaker grits, then it's cheap, instant, 5 minutes. You eat it because you need to have something else to eat during your meal. But if you really look at grits, the original grits before all the processing plants were heirloom corn varietal. And there's so many different types of heirloom corn varietals. And if you get a coarser ground grit, not the super cheap instant one, right? You can add to it. You add salt to it. You add pepper to it. Sugar if you are that person. I am not that person, which is a different argument, a different podcast.
So you all have a mixed marriage when it comes to grits.
No, we don't have a mixed marriage. The grits are cooked how I cook grits. But once they get outside that pot, I ain't got nothing to do with it. You do whatever you want to do with it. You can add sugar, molasses, honey. In that pot, though, is salt, pepper, butter, and then, it leaves the pot. It's kind of like, once the bird get out the nest, I'm no longer responsible for it.
Yeah.
I raised it, taught you how to fly, you do your thing. So it's grits, right? And it's grits because a great pot of grits, I think, is like great Southern food. The best ones happen when you start with the best ingredients and you take the most time you take and you don't do too much to it. I think that's the beautiful thing about Southernness in general, right? Like, we take our time to make things great. And like, yes, it might not be done in 2 minutes. It might take an hour or two, but like, do something else. And when you come back to this thing, it's going to be the best version of this thing you can get. And I think the way we make our grits, we cook them slow, we cook them with stock, milk, butter, salt at the beginning, and all that good flavor takes time. It's an hour and a half, 2 hours on the grit cooking, right? The base of that is excellent. So you might be making shrimp and grits. You might be making fish and grits. You might be making whatever, but the grits itself are the star. So whatever you put on top of that, as long as it ain't bad, the dish is going to be great. So if I'm picking a thing, it will be always grits.
Well, and I will just finish up our conversation by asking an important question that many of our guests answered in season 1. Boiled peanuts, yay or nay?
Oh, yeah. My grandpa brought home boiled peanuts all the time. I love boiled peanuts.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I love boiled
peanuts. But they got to be made good, though.
They do, because they were salted. So when my grandpa brought them home in this little plastic bag, I think he used to stop at his gas station to get them.
Look, random tip at the end of it. If you make collard greens, the liquid left over from collard greens, especially if you turkey meat, boil your peanuts in that.
Yeah.
Best thing on earth. Pot liquor boiled peanuts, I promise. You might not smack your mama because you ain't crazy, but yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you all very much for doing this.
Thank you. Thank y'all so much. We appreciate y'all having us. Thank you.
You know what struck me, Robert, about talking to these chefs was how all of them mentioned the fact that they are now in the dining room, on the front porch, and no longer hidden in the kitchen, so that when people come in, they know exactly who is presenting them this food.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, because when we think about cuisine in the South, we think about two things: how delicious the food is, and how the people who are making that food are often not seen making money off of that food or getting any dividends from that particular cuisine. But now I think both the Colliers and Chef Aarón Sanchez show that these groups, Latinos and Blacks, are now not only in the kitchen, but they're also on the forefront of the restaurant, running the restaurants, making money off the restaurants, really putting their names and faces out there as people who deserve to make money off of this generations-long cuisine.
Yeah, no longer just the laborers, but actually the entrepreneurs. And the other thing that struck me was how all three talked about the dishes that they make are dishes that are part of their individual heritage, right? They're foods that their mothers and grandmothers made, that they ate. And the same thing with Aarón Sanchez. He said it was the same thing that his abuela made for him. And this is the food that they're actually presenting to the public.
I mean, I think it's one of those things that crosses cultural boundaries, right? We listen to our grandmothers, to Big Mama, to our abuelas to make sure that we get the right kind of cuisine, the right kind of ingredients, mix them all up in the kitchen and make something special. And I think it's important both the Colliers and Chef Sanchez because, well, let's be honest about it. The Saints and the Titans weren't exactly good this past NFL season. So you need plenty of good food to enjoy while you watch these teams every Sunday.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'd like to thank our listeners for tuning into this episode of our podcast. And be sure to catch the next episode, which is on the idea of censoring education, which is not only the banning of books, but also just the restriction of education.
You know what I'm saying? It's like we got a demo tape and nobody want to hear it, but it's like this the South got something to say.
Our New South is presented by Levine Museum of the New South. Levine Museum connects the past to the future to realize the promises of a New South. To learn more and donate to projects like this, visit museumofenewsouth.org.
Our New South is produced by Next Chapter Podcasts. Thanks to editor and sound designer Kyle Murdoch, producers Brian Douglas, Alexander Piñeres, and Cliff Whitfield, senior producer and writer Byron Hunter, and executive producers Jeremiah Tittle and Frankie Abbott. Please follow the show, subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Learn more at nextchapterpodcast.com/Our New South.
Thanks for listening.
The South got something to say.
Your Wish is Your Command is being called the greatest success book of all time, with over 100,000 five-star reviews.
I went from $5,000 on my bank account to $8 million.
My income doubled.
I was able to retire at the age of 31.
It reveals the missing key to the law of attraction. Your Wish is Your Command is now available on Amazon. Search Your Wish is Your Command on Amazon to get your copy today.
From the history of radioactive makeup to all the loony things Henry VIII did to ensure we never stop making movies about him, Weird History is a podcast that answers all the questions you didn't even know you had about the most unbelievable people, places, and events of the past. Based on the hugely successful YouTube channel, Weird History invites you to bone up on what it was like to use a public bathroom in ancient Rome while learning about the single worst year of all time. Don't worry, we missed it by a millennium or so. Then get the skinny on modern history, like the true story behind The Conjuring, and just what the hell Steven Seagal did to get banned from SNL. Let Weird History be your guide to the stranger side of history they don't teach you in school. Because the past is weird, a lot weirder than you think. Subscribe now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Next Chapter Podcasts.